It had started out as just another stormy night in Seattle, a night when the relentless rain blurred the city lights into streaks of silver across wet pavement, and when most people hurried home to escape the chill. For Luke Harrison, however, it was merely another evening on his routine drive to Sam's Corner Diner, a humble refuge tucked away on a quiet side street in the heart of the city's eclectic neighborhood. At 34 years old, Luke was a seasoned mechanic, known for his honest work at Harrison's Auto Repair, a modest garage that had been his life's passion for as long as he could remember. That night, after a long day of bending over engines, greasy hands, and endless fixes for hurried customers, he sought only a brief moment of solace. A warm cup of coffee, a quiet table, and a chance to let the world slow down, even if just for a few minutes. As he pushed open the diner's door, a cheerful chime rang out above him, momentarily drowning the steady patter of rain. Inside, Sam's Corner Diner glowed like a beacon of comfort against the cold, wet night. Soft amber lights bathed the worn but well-loved booths, and the inviting aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the faint strains of an old jukebox playing a familiar tune. Only a handful of regulars occupied their usual seats that night, each lost in their own thoughts. Luke chose his favorite spot at the counter, sinking into the well-worn stool as he wrapped his calloused hands around a steaming mug of coffee. His mind wandered briefly over the long hours spent under hoods and behind workbenches, and for a few blissful moments, he allowed himself to relax. Just as Luke was about to take another sip, the door swung open with a jingle, and in rushed a woman unlike any he had seen before. She burst into the diner in a state of disarray, drenched by the downpour, her expensive-looking trench coat clinging to her like a second skin, water droplets cascading off her polished leather boots. Her hair, still dark but matted by the rain, framed a face that held an unmistakable mix of anxiety and quiet determination. It was immediately clear to Luke that she did not belong to the world of faded vinyl booths and time-worn counterstools. Instead, there was something refined and elegant in the way she carried herself, a grace that hinted at a life far removed from the simple comforts of this small-town diner. The mysterious woman paused for a moment near the entrance, her eyes scanning the room as if searching for something, or perhaps someone. Without a word, she made her way toward an empty booth in the far corner and sat down, her posture stiff with an unspoken worry. Luke, despite trying to focus on his coffee, couldn't help but notice the troubled expression on her face. There was a weight there, a heaviness that seemed almost palpable, as though she were carrying a secret burden too immense to share with anyone. A few minutes later, as the low hum of conversation and the clatter of utensils filled the air, a young waitress approached the woman's table and gently placed a menu in front of her. Luke tried to divert his gaze back to his own mug, but inevitably he overheard snippets of their quiet exchange. I think I forgot my wallet," the woman murmured in a soft, embarrassed tone, her voice barely rising above the background music. The waitress responded with a kind smile, offering reassurances that were as comforting as they were routine. Yet, as the woman rummaged through her designer bag, her cheeks flushing with a mixture of embarrassment and urgency, it was clear to Luke that her discomfort ran deeper than a mere forgetfulness. Something stirred in him, a natural impulse born not only of empathy, but of a deeply ingrained desire to help. Setting his coffee down with deliberate calm, Luke called the waitress over and with a few crumpled bills in his hand said simply, "Let me cover this." The waitress looked taken aback by his straightforward kindness. "Are you sure?" she asked hesitantly. Luke nodded, replying with a gentle, reassuring smile. "Yeah, it's no trouble at all." "We all forget sometimes." The woman glanced up, her startled eyes softening with gratitude as she murmured, "Oh no, please, you really shouldn't have." But Luke only shrugged, returning his attention to the comforting ritual of his coffee. For him, doing good deeds came naturally. He never sought recognition or praise. His satisfaction lay solely in the act itself. After finishing her meal quietly, the mysterious woman rose from her seat and with a measured pace, made her way over to the counter. In a soft, tentative tone, she said, "Thank you," again. Then, almost as an afterthought, she retrieved a small napkin from a dispenser on the counter. With a bit of careful, hurried writing, she scrawled something on it and slid it across to Luke. "Here's my number," she said quietly. I'd like to repay you somehow. Luke glanced at the napkin, his eyebrows lifting in mild surprise as he read the name and digits printed there. It simply read Isabelle Winters, followed by her phone number. The name, Isabelle, resonated with him in a way he couldn't immediately explain. Who was this mysterious woman, and why did their brief encounter feel so significant? In the days and weeks that followed, Luke found himself thinking of Isabelle almost obsessively. It began with a tentative phone call, a conversation that was shy at first, but soon blossomed into the promise of coffee dates and casual meetups. Over time, the pair discovered a genuine connection. Luke, a humble mechanic who had weathered years of hard work and modest dreams, opened up to Isabelle about his struggles with finances and his long-cherished dream of one day owning his own garage. In return, Isabelle shared fragments of her life. She spoke vaguely of working in business, carefully dodging specifics as if to preserve an air of normality. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to be seen for who she truly was, a woman yearning for genuine connection rather than adoration for her apparent wealth or status. Yet as their relationship deepened, an undercurrent of mystery began to gnaw at Luke's mind. Despite her gentle, unassuming nature, there was something about Isabelle that didn't quite add up. It wasn't until one fateful afternoon, when Luke, eager to surprise her, visited her apartment with a thermos of her favorite coffee, that the truth burst forth in a torrent of revelation. The moment he stepped through her front door, Luke was struck dumb by the opulence that greeted him. The apartment was vast and elegantly furnished, adorned with priceless artwork and designer furniture that screamed luxury. On the coffee table lay a glossy magazine, its cover emblazoned with a headline proclaiming, "Isabelle Winters, the billionaire CEO who's changing the game." Luke's heart pounded as he stared at the image of the woman he thought he knew, the same Isabelle he had fallen for on that rainy night at Sam's Corner Diner. For a long, painful moment the room was silent except for the rhythmic hum of his own breath. Finally, Isabelle emerged from another room, her face falling into an expression of shock and distress as she took in the scene. Luke, standing there, holding the magazine as if it were evidence of some unspeakable betrayal. "Luke," she began softly, her voice trembling, I can explain." Her eyes searched his, pleading for understanding, but Luke's expression was a tumult of hurt and disbelief as he pressed, "Explain what? Have you been lying to me this whole time?" Isabelle's eyes welled with tears as she hurriedly replied, "No, I wasn't lying, I didn't want my money to come between us. I was terrified you'd see me only as a rich CEO rather than the person I truly am." Luke's voice, heavy with emotion, cut through the tense air. "You really thought I'd care more about your money than about you," he said in a low, quivering tone. "I thought I knew you, Isabelle, but now I'm not so sure." Overwhelmed by a cocktail of emotions, betrayal, longing, and confusion, Luke set the magazine aside and walked out, leaving Isabelle standing in the doorway, tears streaming silently down her face. For days afterward, Luke's thoughts were a maelstrom of regret and heartache. He felt torn between the warmth of the connection they had shared and the sting of feeling deceived by secrets. Alone in his small apartment above his modest garage, Luke found little solace. Every creak of the floor, every quiet moment reminded him of Isabelle's hidden life and of the trust he had thought they shared. The betrayal, however, was intermingled with a deep, unyielding sense of longing. Despite everything, he missed her terribly. In the lonely hours of the night, as the rain tapped softly against his window, Luke discovered a letter tucked into his mailbox, a letter from Isabelle. In it, she poured out her heart with raw vulnerability, explaining how the weight of her secret had left her isolated and afraid. "I fell in love with you, Luke," the letter read, "because you see me for who I am, not for what I have. I hope you can forgive me." Luke read and reread the letter until each word softened the sharp edges of his anger. In that quiet solitude, he realized that perhaps both of them needed to let go of their fears, to embrace the truth, even if it hurt. A few days later, news of a charity gala hosted by Isabelle reached Luke. On an impulse fueled by equal parts curiosity and the lingering desire for resolution, he borrowed a suit from a close friend and attended the event. The grand hall was filled with elegantly dressed guests, sparkling chandeliers overhead, and an air of subdued excitement that contrasted sharply with the raw pain of recent days. Amid the sea of formal faces, Luke spotted Isabelle standing alone in a quiet corner, her gaze distant and shadowed by sorrow. Mustering every ounce of courage, he approached her. "Isabelle," he said softly, his voice cutting through the ambient chatter. Startled, she turned to him, her eyes widening in surprise. "Luke," she whispered, and for a moment the bustle of the gala fell away around them. They stood together in a brief, fragile silence until Luke finally spoke. "I've been thinking," he said, his tone laden with a mix of regret and newfound resolve. "I was angry and I felt betrayed, but now I realize that maybe I wasn't entirely fair. I let my pride and fear get in the way of what really matters. I care about you, not your money." Isabelle's eyes shimmered with tears as she reached out, trembling with relief and vulnerability. "You mean that?" she asked in a soft, uncertain tone. "Yes," Luke replied, his voice earnest and sincere. "I want us to start fresh, no more secrets. I want to know you, the real you." Slowly, Isabelle stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. "You were always enough for me," she whispered into his ear, her voice thick with emotion. "I was just too scared to believe it." In that tender embrace, the hurt began to ease, and a cautious hope took root. In the weeks that followed, Luke and Isabelle embarked on a journey to rebuild the fragile trust between them. Their relationship deepened gradually, nurtured by honest conversations, quiet dinners in small, unpretentious restaurants, and long walks along the rain-soaked streets of Seattle. Luke, ever the hard-working mechanic with dreams that extended far beyond the confines of his modest garage, shared his aspirations of one day opening his own repair shop, a place where he could combine his technical skill with the creative freedom to build a future on his own terms. Isabelle, for her part, remained careful about revealing too much about her past. She had spent years guarding a secret that had shaped her life. A secret that, if revealed in its entirety, could upend everything. For Isabelle was not merely the gentle, kind-hearted woman Luke had come to adore. She was, in truth, a billionaire CEO who had built an empire on the foundation of a successful multinational corporation. Over the years, the trappings of immense wealth had forced her to hide her true self, to adopt a facade that distanced her from genuine human connection. She had long feared that if anyone discovered the truth, they would see her as nothing more than a figure defined by her bank balance, a cold, calculating magnate, rather than the warm, empathetic person she wished to be. The moment of truth finally came one quiet afternoon when, determined to surprise Isabelle and show him that he truly knew her, Luke decided to visit her apartment unannounced. With a freshly brewed cup of coffee, her favorite blend, in hand, he knocked softly on the door. When the door creaked open, what he saw stopped him in his tracks. The apartment was nothing like he had ever imagined. It was vast, opulent, and filled with expensive art and designer furnishings. A glossy magazine lay conspicuously on the coffee table, its cover boldly declaring, "Isabelle Winters, the billionaire CEO who's changing the game." Luke's heart pounded in his chest as he stared, unable to reconcile the image of the gentle woman he'd grown to love with this extravagant lifestyle. "Isabelle," he said in a shaky whisper, "I can't believe this." At that moment, Isabelle appeared in the doorway, her face blanching as she took in Luke's presence, especially as he held the magazine. "Luke," she began, her voice barely audible, I can explain." His eyes, filled with a tumult of hurt and disbelief, met hers. "Explain what, Isabelle? Have you been hiding this from me all along?" he demanded, his voice cracking with emotion. In a flurry of tears and trembling words, Isabelle stammered, "No, I wasn't lying. I didn't want my money, my status, to get in the way of what we have. I was afraid that if you knew the truth, you'd see me differently." Luke's gaze fell, a heavy silence enveloping them for a long moment. "I thought I knew you," he finally said, voice low and pained. "But now, I'm not so sure." Unable to bear the weight of the revelation, Luke set the magazine aside and stormed out, leaving Isabelle standing alone in the grand foyer, tears streaming down her face as the door closed softly behind him. For days afterward, Luke's thoughts were consumed by a bitter mix of longing and betrayal. In the quiet solitude of his modest apartment above his garage, he replayed every moment of their time together, every whispered conversation, searching for clues that might explain the hidden half of Isabelle's life. The sense of abandonment and confusion gnawed at him, even as he could not deny the deep connection they had forged. Late one rainy evening, as the patter of raindrops against his window provided a mournful soundtrack to his solitude, Luke discovered a letter in his mailbox. The envelope was simple and unadorned, a stark contrast to the lavish world Isabelle had kept hidden. With trembling hands he opened it and began to read. The letter was from Isabelle, written in a careful, sincere hand. In it, she revealed the loneliness that had plagued her, the constant fear of being judged for the vast fortune that had been thrust upon her by circumstance. "I fell in love with you, Luke, because you see me for who I truly am." The letter read, "Not for what I possess. Please forgive me for hiding my past." Luke read the letter over and over until each word softened the sharp edges of his anger. Slowly, he began to understand that Isabelle had been terrified that her wealth would overshadow the genuine connection they had, that he would be unable to see the real, caring person behind the mask of a billionaire CEO. Determined to salvage what remained of their fragile bond, Luke decided to attend a charity gala that Isabelle was hosting. A grand event that, despite its opulent trappings, had a purpose far nobler than mere display of wealth. Borrowing a suit from a trusted friend, he arrived at the elegant venue, where crystal chandeliers hung overhead and guests mingled amidst a flurry of polite laughter and clinking champagne glasses. Amid the glittering throng, Luke's eyes sought out Isabelle. It wasn't long before he found her standing alone in a quiet corner, her gaze distant and her expression pensive. Steeling himself, he approached her. "Isabelle," he said softly, his voice cutting through the ambient hum of the gala. She turned, startled, and for a moment, the glittering lights of the hall faded into insignificance as they faced each other. "I've been thinking," Luke began, "and I realized that I was angry, hurt even, because I felt betrayed. But now I know that you were scared too. I don't care about your money, Isabelle. I care about you, the person I fell in love with." Tears welled in her eyes as she hesitated, then stepped forward to embrace him. "You were always enough for me," she whispered, her voice trembling with relief and longing. "I was just too afraid to let you in." In that heartfelt moment, the burdens of their secrets seemed to lessen, and hope began to sprout anew between them. Over the following weeks, as autumn turned Seattle streets into a tapestry of rain-washed amber and gold, Luke and Isabelle slowly rebuilt the trust that had been fractured by hidden truths. They spent long afternoons walking along the rain-drenched sidewalks, talking about their dreams and their disappointments. Luke, whose life had been defined by grease, sweat, and the hum of engines, shared his long-held ambition of opening his own auto repair shop, a place where he could not only work with his hands but also create something that was entirely his. Isabelle, for her part, struggled with the weight of her secret. She had built a reputation as a formidable CEO, a woman whose business acumen and wealth made headlines across the nation. Yet beneath that polished exterior, she yearned for a life of simplicity and genuine human connection. A life where she could be known simply as Isabelle, not as a symbol of extravagant wealth. Despite her inner turmoil, Isabelle did her best to support Luke. She attended every meeting when he sought advice on business matters. She offered quiet words of encouragement when he doubted his abilities, and, in subtle ways, she used the vast resources at her disposal to help him inch closer to his dream. Yet, even as their relationship deepened and they began to forge a partnership built on mutual respect and love, the shadow of Isabelle's secret continued to lurk. The revelation of her true identity, a billionaire CEO, had shaken Luke to his core, and though he had chosen to forgive, the memory of that night at her luxurious apartment still haunted him. One crisp winter afternoon, when Seattle's skies were low and heavy with impending snow, Luke resolved that he could no longer live in the half-truth that had come to define their relationship. He invited Isabelle to join him for a quiet lunch at a small bistro near his garage, a place where the clamor of expensive boardrooms was replaced by the simple comfort of hearty food and genuine conversation. Over steaming bowls of soup and slices of freshly baked bread, Luke gently broached the subject. "Isabelle," he said, "I need to know everything. I need to understand why you hid your true self from me. I fell in love with the woman who met me on a rainy night at a diner, not the CEO whose image was plastered on magazine covers." Isabelle's eyes filled with tears as she nodded, her hands trembling slightly on the table. Taking a deep breath, she began to recount the painful chapters of her past. A tale of family expectations, betrayal, and a sudden heart-wrenching loss that had forced her to adopt a facade of wealth and power as a means of survival. She explained how, in her youth, circumstances beyond her control had propelled her into a world of privilege, a world that demanded she conceal her vulnerabilities at all costs. "I was afraid," she admitted softly. "Afraid that if you saw my true self, you'd only see a fragile, insecure person and not the strong, independent woman I tried so hard to become." Luke listened intently, his heart softening with every word. "I understand now," he murmured. "I wish you had trusted me with your truth sooner, but I also know that fear can be a powerful barrier. All I care about is that we face the future together, without secrets." Their conversation marked a turning point. In the days that followed, Luke and Isabelle committed themselves to transparency and honesty. The painful past, though not easily forgotten, began to pave the way for a future in which both could embrace their true selves. Luke, buoyed by the renewed closeness between them, redoubled his efforts to make his dream a reality. With a combination of grit, determination, and the quiet support of Isabelle, he finally took the leap and opened Harrison's Auto Works, a modest garage that quickly became known for its exceptional craftsmanship, fair pricing, and the genuine warmth of its owner. The grand opening was a simple yet moving affair, attended by friends, family, and even a few loyal customers from Sam's Corner Diner who had heard of Luke's transformation. A freshly painted sign hung proudly above the entrance, and as Luke cut the ribbon, amid applause and heartfelt congratulations, he felt a surge of fulfillment that had long eluded him. Throughout the celebrations, Isabelle stood by his side, her eyes shining with pride. Though the revelation of her double life had once threatened to drive them apart, it had ultimately become a catalyst for healing and growth. Isabelle's secret, once a source of tension, had transformed into a symbol of the sacrifices she had made. Sacrifices that had ultimately allowed her to find the courage to be vulnerable with the man she loved. In that moment, as the setting sun cast a warm glow over the modest crowd gathered outside the new garage, Luke and Isabelle shared a quiet, knowing smile. Their journey had been fraught with pain, betrayal, and heartache, but it had also led them to a place of genuine understanding and hope. In the weeks and months that followed, Harrison's Auto Works thrived. Luke's reputation as a dedicated mechanic spread throughout Seattle, and the humble garage became a local institution, a place where every repair and every friendly smile served as a reminder that hard work and integrity could overcome even the deepest scars of the past. Isabelle, meanwhile, gradually began to let go of the fears that had once dictated her every move. No longer did she feel compelled to hide behind the mask of a ruthless CEO. Instead, she embraced her multifaceted identity and allowed herself to be seen as the warm, caring person she had always longed to be. Together, they forged a partnership that went far beyond business. A partnership built on mutual respect, shared dreams, and the unyielding belief that love could heal even the most fractured hearts. As seasons changed and Seattle's weather shifted from the chill of winter to the vibrant renewal of spring, Luke and Isabelle's relationship blossomed. They spent lazy afternoons exploring the city's hidden gems, the winding trails of Discovery Park, the quirky boutiques of Capitol Hill, and the quiet corners of local coffee shops where the aroma of freshly roasted beans mingled with soft indie music. Each day, as they navigated the ups and downs of life together, they discovered new depth to their bond. Luke learned that Isabelle's success in the boardroom was matched only by her compassion and generosity off it, while Isabelle found in Luke a steadfast, unpretentious love that anchored her in a world of fleeting appearances and superficial judgments. One particularly memorable evening, after a long day at the garage, Luke and Isabelle sat together on the steps of a small community garden tucked away behind an old brick building. The sky above was a deep, velvety blue, scattered with countless stars that shimmered like distant promises. In the gentle silence of that night, as the cool breeze whispered through the budding leaves, Luke turned to Isabelle and said, "I used to think that success was measured by wealth and power, that the more I earned, the more I'd be whole. But none of that could ever replace the warmth of having someone truly understand you, someone who cares about you for who you are." Isabelle's eyes glistened as she replied, "And I used to fear that my past, my wealth, would define me. But you showed me that love isn't about what we have, it's about who we are. I'm so grateful for you, Luke." In that tender moment, the many struggles, the painful secrets, and the long nights of uncertainty all seemed to melt away, leaving only the raw, unfiltered truth of their shared humanity. Yet, as with any true journey, their path was not without obstacles. Rumors and whispers from the upper echelons of Isabelle's corporate world occasionally threatened to intrude upon the serenity they had fought so hard to create. There were nights when Isabelle would lie awake, tormented by the fear that her hidden past might one day unravel everything they had built together. And there were moments when Luke, despite his newfound success and happiness, felt the lingering sting of betrayal, an echo of the night he discovered the truth about Isabelle's double life. But each time those doubts arose, they faced them together, with open hearts and unwavering determination. They knew that the strength of their connection was forged in the fires of honesty and vulnerability, and that no external force could ever diminish the light they had found in one another. In time, the story of Luke Harrison and Isabelle Winters spread throughout Seattle like a gentle, persistent tide. Neighbors, friends, and even strangers marveled at the unlikely romance. A romance that had begun on a stormy, rain-soaked night in a modest diner and grown into something resilient and real. Local newspapers ran features on Luke's journey from mechanic to successful garage owner, and on how his chance encounter with Isabelle had transformed not only his own life but also the lives of those around him. In interviews, Luke would often say, "It wasn't the rain that changed my life. It was the kindness of a stranger who showed me that sometimes the most extraordinary connections begin with the simplest acts of compassion." Isabelle too found solace in sharing her story, urging others not to be defined by their wealth or status, but to always remain true to themselves. As the years passed, Harrison's auto works expanded steadily. Luke's garage became a hub for local car enthusiasts and a training ground for young mechanics who dreamed of one day making their mark in the automotive world. The values of hard work, integrity, and kindness that Luke embodied were passed on to every apprentice and employee, creating a ripple effect that extended far beyond the confines of the small repair shop. Isabelle, once burdened by the necessity of secrecy, gradually transformed her approach to business. She began to openly advocate for transparency and ethical practices within the corporate world, speaking at conferences and contributing to philanthropic endeavors that sought to bridge the gap between wealth and social responsibility. Her journey from a hidden, guarded CEO to a public figure known for her warmth and authenticity became an inspiration to countless individuals who had long struggled under the weight of expectations. One warm summer evening, as the city of Seattle buzzed with the excitement of an outdoor music festival, Luke and Isabelle attended an event hosted by a local charity. Beneath the soft glow of string lights and amidst a crowd of joyful faces, they stood together on a small stage to announce a new community initiative. A program designed to provide scholarships and vocational training for underprivileged youth interested in pursuing careers in auto repair and technical trades. "We all have our beginnings," Luke said in his measured, sincere tone, "and sometimes the most extraordinary journeys start with a simple act of kindness. Today, we want to share that gift with those who need it most." Isabelle's eyes shone as she added, "Let this be a reminder that success isn't measured solely by what we earn, but by how we uplift those around us. Every small act, every moment of genuine connection has the power to change lives." Their words resonated deeply with the audience, and the applause that followed was a testament to the transformative impact of their story. In the years that followed, the bond between Luke and Isabelle only deepened, their love growing more resilient with each challenge they overcame. They celebrated milestones, both big and small: a modest anniversary dinner at a quiet bistro, the opening of a new branch of Harrison's Auto Works, and even the simple pleasure of sharing a rainy afternoon at home, curled up on the couch with nothing more than a shared silence between them. Despite the occasional lingering doubt or the resurfacing of old fears, they remained steadfast in their commitment to one another. For them, the trials of the past had become stepping stones toward a future defined not by perfection, but by the beautiful imperfections that made them human. Late one autumn night, as the rain began to fall once more, Luke found himself alone in the quiet solitude of his office above the garage. The soft tapping of raindrops on the window pane and the distant hum of Seattle's nocturnal streets filled the space with a gentle melancholy. In that reflective moment, he picked up a worn photograph of himself as a young man, a time when hope and dreams had been as abundant as the rain. He thought back to that fateful night at Sam's Corner Diner, to the mysterious woman whose act of vulnerability had sparked a connection that would change his life forever. With a wistful smile, he whispered to himself, "It all started with one kind gesture, a moment when the world seemed to pause just long enough for fate to intervene." The memory was a quiet affirmation that even in the midst of hardship and uncertainty, there existed a power in kindness that could transform even the most ordinary of lives. Isabelle, too, would often reflect on the twists of fate that had led her to this very moment. In the quiet mornings before the city awoke, as she sipped her coffee in the calm of her home, she recalled the stormy night when she had first stepped into that humble diner, drenched and desperate, not knowing that a simple act of compassion would be the spark that ignited an entirely new chapter of her life. Now, as she looked at the world through the lens of both vulnerability and strength, she understood that her journey had been about more than just hiding behind a facade of wealth. It was about finding herself, learning to trust, and ultimately, embracing the unpredictable, beautiful chaos of love. As the seasons turned and the city of Seattle evolved with the ebb and flow of time, Luke and Isabelle continued to build a life together that was defined by authenticity, perseverance, and hope. Their story, which had begun on a rain-soaked night in a modest diner, had grown into a living testament to the enduring power of kindness and the transformative magic of taking a chance on love. They faced challenges, experienced moments of doubt, and sometimes found themselves at odds with the complexities of their pasts. Yet they never lost sight of the simple truth that had brought them together: that genuine connection can emerge from the most unexpected of circumstances. In time, their journey became a beacon for others, an inspiration for those who believed that even in a world often dominated by superficial success and guarded hearts, there still existed a place for vulnerability, for truth, and for the kind of love that defies all odds. Luke's garage, once a small, unassuming workshop on the outskirts of Seattle, had become not only a thriving business but also a community center where aspiring mechanics could learn and grow. Isabelle, once burdened by the weight of secrets and societal expectations, gradually embraced her dual identity as both a compassionate leader in the corporate world and as a woman unafraid to show her true self. Their collaboration extended beyond their personal relationship, as they spearheaded initiatives that bridged the gap between business and community service, proving that success was measured not by the size of one's bank account, but by the impact one had on the lives of others. One particularly memorable evening, during a gala hosted by a local non-profit, Luke and Isabelle shared the stage with community leaders and activists, speaking passionately about the need for transparency, empathy, and social responsibility in every facet of life. "In our world," Luke said, his voice resonant with conviction, "the true measure of a person is not the wealth they accumulate, but the kindness they extend and the lives they touch. Tonight, we celebrate not only success, but the journey that has made us who we are." Isabelle joined in, her eyes alight with determination. "We stand here as proof that even the darkest nights can give way to new beginnings. Every storm, every tear shed in solitude has the power to wash away the past and reveal the light of a future built on trust and compassion." The audience erupted in applause, and for a moment the power of their shared truth seemed to illuminate the entire room. In the years that followed, the legacy of their journey continued to ripple outward. Luke and Isabella became mentors and role models for countless individuals who, like them, had once felt lost in a world that prized appearances over authenticity. Their story was chronicled in local newspapers, featured in documentaries, and even shared on social media platforms as an emblem of hope, for those struggling to overcome adversity. They often recalled the early days, the rainy night at Sam's Corner Diner, the nervous yet sincere exchange over a forgotten wallet, and the fragile, trembling hope that had led them to each other. These memories served as a constant reminder that the most profound transformations often begin with the smallest acts of kindness. One chilly winter morning, as a light dusting of snow began to settle over Seattle's busy streets, Luke and Isabelle stood side by side outside their modest home, watching the world wake to a day filled with possibility. The air was crisp, and the quiet murmur of life in the early hours seemed to echo with promises of new beginnings. Luke turned to Isabelle, his eyes soft with reflection. "You know," he said quietly, "all those years I spent working away in the garage, trying to build something on my own, I never imagined that the key to my happiness would come from a single moment of kindness in a small diner on a rainy night." Isabelle smiled gently, her hand resting on his arm. "And I never imagined that the truth I'd been so desperate to hide would one day set me free. Together we've turned our pain into strength and our secrets into hope." In that simple exchange, the profound truth of their journey was laid bare. A truth that spoke to the enduring power of love, forgiveness, and the belief that no one is ever truly lost as long as there is hope to guide them home. As the years melded into one another, Luke and Isabelle's lives continued to intertwine in ways that enriched not only their own souls, but also the community around them. Harrison's auto works expanded steadily, and with it came new opportunities to mentor young apprentices and support local initiatives. Isabelle, now more open about her past than ever before, used her influence to promote ethical practices in the business world, speaking at conferences and dedicating time to philanthropic ventures aimed at uplifting those who had been marginalized by society. Their shared mission, rooted in the belief that true success was defined by the lives touched and the hearts healed, became a rallying cry for many. On one crisp spring day, as cherry blossoms began to bloom and the gentle warmth of the sun dispelled the lingering chill of winter, Luke and Isabelle organized a community event in a local park. Families, friends, and neighbors gathered to celebrate the beauty of life and the power of human connection. Amid laughter, music, and the joyful clamor of children playing, Luke took a moment to speak. "We all have moments in life that change us forever," he said, his voice carrying both conviction and vulnerability. "For me, it started with one rainy night and a single act of kindness, a moment that taught me that even when life seems bleak, there's always a spark of hope waiting to ignite a new beginning." Isabelle's eyes glistened with tears as she added, "And sometimes, the truth we fear most is the very thing that can set us free." I stand here today, not as a billionaire or a CEO, but as a woman who has learned that the most important measure of success is the love we share and the lives we change. The crowd applauded warmly, and in that moment, it was clear that their journey had transcended the boundaries of personal struggle to become a beacon for the entire community. As twilight fell over the park and the first stars began to twinkle in the deepening sky, Luke and Isabelle walked hand in hand along a quiet pathway lined with flickering lampposts. The soft murmur of conversation and the distant strains of a street musician's tune accompanied them as they reminisced about the twists of fate that had led them to this point. Every step, every shared glance was a testament to the power of resilience and the belief that even the most unassuming moments can spark extraordinary change. In the quiet intimacy of that night, as the cool breeze whispered through the trees and the city of Seattle slumbered beneath a blanket of stars, Luke paused and looked into Isabelle's eyes. "I once believed that my life was defined by absence, by the void left by the loss of someone I never truly understood. But now I see that every absence, every scar, has led me to you, and through you, to a future I never dared dream of." Isabelle's smile was soft and forgiving as she squeezed his hand gently. "We're not defined by what we've lost, Luke," she murmured. "We're defined by what we choose to build from it. The love we give, the dreams we share, and the hope we never let go of." In that moment, the echoes of a painful past faded away, replaced by the luminous promise of a future crafted by their own hands. Thus, what had begun as a seemingly ordinary night, a rainy evening, a small diner, and a simple act of kindness, had evolved into a profound journey of self-discovery, healing, and love. Luke Harrison and Isabelle Winters had found in each other not only solace from the storms of life, but also the courage to face their deepest fears and to embrace the truth, however complicated and painful it might be. Their shared story became a living reminder that, even in a world rife with secrets and hidden identities, genuine human connection remains the most powerful force of all, a force capable of mending broken hearts and illuminating the darkest of nights. And so, as the seasons turned and the city of Seattle continued its ceaseless rhythm of rain and light, Luke and Isabelle pressed on with quiet determination, building a life that was as much about resilience as it was about love. Their journey, fraught with challenges, adorned with bittersweet memories, and fueled by unwavering hope, was a testament to the enduring truth that every act of kindness has the power to change the course of a life. In the soft glow of early morning, with the rain gently tapping against their windows and the promise of a new day on the horizon, they both knew that together they could weather any storm. For in the end, it wasn't the rain or the secrets that defined them. It was the simple, unyielding belief that love, above all else, would guide them home.